Meanwhile, at the top of the ticket, former President Donald Trump is expected to meet with Republican senators this week in Washington, with sources telling NBC News they'll discuss his campaign plans for the summer, as well as his strategy for governing if he wins in November. And joining us now, Michael Steele, former RNC chairman and co-host of The Weekend here on MSNBC, and Julian Castro, former HUD secretary and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, and an MSNBC political analyst. Gentlemen, it's good to have you. Michael, as we just mentioned, Trump has this upcoming meeting with Republican senators. He's got pretty complicated relationships with some of these Republicans in the Senate specifically. I'm thinking Mitch McConnell, among others. How do you expect this to go?
Well, it'll go as it always goes with these guys. They'll fall in line because they have to. There's no thread here or backbone that's going to tell Donald Trump to his face, you, sir, need to stand down and allow us to move forward with a different nominee. You are a convicted felon. It is not a good brand for the party of law and order to be led by someone who is a 34-time convicted felon. But they won't do that. So the conversation will be, how do we, butter you up? There'll be a lot of that. Mr. Trump, oh, you're the greatest. We're so fortunate that you deign to be in our presence. Worrying about his governing strategy. What governing strategy? He didn't have one 4 years ago. What makes you think he's going to have one now? He's the chaos candidate. So the party's got to reconcile itself to what the rest of this campaign looks like with a convicted felon leading the charge, how the country responds to that. And they'll worry about the governing part on the back end. Look, this is the squad that could not get an infrastructure bill done in 4 years. An infrastructure bill, which is probably one of the easiest things that you can do in Congress because you're doling out cash.
Although President Biden would argue it wasn't so easy because it didn't happen, even though there were multiple infrastructure weeks during the Trump administration.
Well, but it wasn't so easy because the Republicans tried to block it. But Republicans, don't forget, Anna had control of the Congress, the House, the Senate, and the White House for 2 years and couldn't get it done. And
ultimately, it was a bipartisan bill that did pass eventually. Right. Julian, we have some new reporting on Team Biden's game plan ahead of the first debate. A campaign official telling NBC News that Biden's mandate will be to let Trump be Trump, which they believe is going to reveal extreme leanings and less stable Trump than 4 years ago, and that Biden is likely to cast Trump as obsessed with revenge and retribution and hark to the political violence in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. You, of course, have been on the presidential debate stage before. What are your thoughts on this strategy?
Well, I think it's a good strategy. I think that Biden has at least two things going for him here. First of all, the expectations that he comes into this debate with on June 27th are very low. Republicans have painted him as this senile, completely incompetent old president that can't even, say one paragraph without fumbling. But in the State of the Union, he showed that he still got it. And that State of the Union speech did him a lot of good in terms of polling and the confidence that Americans have in his leadership. He has an opportunity to do that here in this first debate. And then secondly, people need to be reminded of how unhinged Donald Trump really is. He's kind of gotten the chance to skate on this over the last couple of years. Yes, he's had his criminal trials, but he hasn't fully been in the spotlight the way that you are when tens of millions of people are watching you go head-to-head against your opponent. And this is an opportunity for Americans to remember all of the insanity of the Trump years, all of the reasons why they rejected him in 2020. And I think that's Biden's strategy is, look, having this guy up in front of people reminding him how crazy he is going to be good for Joe Biden. Last time in 2020, people said, we need a break from this. We need to go with the adult in the room. That's the dynamic that Biden wants again, and that's probably the dynamic that Trump is going to give him in this debate because he can't help himself, and he's shown that over and over.
We know that some key groups could make or break the election in a very close race or could decide the election. The Republican Party, Michael, is betting on making some inroads with black voters this election. Congressman Wesley Hunt, a black Republican who co-hosted an outreach event just last week, said, "We're not going to get everyone. The goal here is not to get the majority. The goal here is to get to that 25 or 30% of the black male vote." Is that a realistic goal for Republicans? And could that make the difference?
No, it's not a realistic goal. I mean, there's so many challenges that go for that. I mean, I've been saying this as long as I've been a Republican. Y'all just can't show up and say that, hey, look at us. We're entrepreneurial. You're entrepreneurial. We go to church. You go to church. There's got to be much more of a conversation. And I'm sorry, you can't lead with gold lame tennis sneakers and, hey, we're going to protect your right to menthol cigarettes. I mean, that's just not the way you brand yourself, particularly given the historic relationship between African Americans and the GOP. So I don't see that. And Donald Trump is not the guy to lead that particular charge. I mean, I'm sorry, when you refer to us as the blacks and you speak of our ancestry as coming from S-hole countries and you say they're fine people on both sides, there's a lot to reconcile there.
Well,
and just getting a black face out there to shop that for you is not the way you're going to win 25, 30% of the black vote or the black male vote for that matter. So I think, it's good. Numbers have moved, but that's got to translate into actual votes. And we're a long way from that happening, I think. But, hey, we'll see.
And of course, Trump has said a lot of offensive things about people from Latin America and Mexico and those heritages that are represented here in the U.S. too. Julian, the election advocacy group Voto Latino just released a survey of 2,000 Latino voters in the battleground state specifically, and it found 18% or 1/5 of likely Latino voters are leaning toward a third-party presidential candidate. What's your reaction to that, and what does that mean for the Biden-Harris campaign?
Well, it means they got some work to do. It means that they need to get out there. They need to define RFK Jr. better. They need to inform voters about what President Biden stands for, remind voters of that. There are kind of two tracks here. They're spending a lot of time, right, trying to remind Latino voters and all voters, but focused on the Latino community. They're trying to remind them how bad Trump is. Family separation, all of the border stuff, his links to Joe Arpaio, all of that. That's one part of it. You also need the positive vision, which they've done a lot less of, but I think they need to ramp up. And then this poll makes clear you cannot sleep on RFK Jr. When you're talking about a battleground state like Arizona that Biden only won by 10 or 11,000 votes, you're talking a state like Georgia that was also super close. Yep. You got to make sure that people are well informed. And this Voto Latino poll, a poll we did at Latino Community Foundation about a month and a half ago, shows that most Latino voters still feel that they're not adequately informed about the candidates or the issues in this election. That means the Biden campaign has work to do.